Well, we are officially live and it is visual as well. So, welcome to my Messy Grief podcast. And today we have joining with us Doug Grote. And Doug is a fun guy. He's the one of our newest board members for P23 Retreat. He loves, he told me he has a passion for chicken wings. But beyond that, he likes to be around happy people. He likes helping people get to a happy place. He's committed to family, loves recreation, exercise. He lives in Eastern Tennessee with his wife, Diana, and they have 3 children, 1 in heaven, 2 boys in college. And he has a wealth of experience. He comes to us with 30 years plus. That's hard to say, Doug, because I think we're the same age. He comes with 30 years plus in the recreation and leisure industry, and he has 20 plus years along in his grief journey. So welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. So we're going to be talking a little bit about sports and recreation and how that relates to how we can process grief in healthy ways. So let's just start by, how did you become interested in sports and recreation?
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to say something that hit me in the first answer, the first thing I said.
Sure.
Because there's people probably, hopefully watching this, not hopefully, but probably watching or listening that are in that grief journey. Mm. And I said, great to be here. And they're not ready to say that yet. It's
right.
Truth.
Right.
I have a friend that every time I call her and she lost a child probably 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Hey, how you doing? No, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And I talked to her about that. It's like, it's okay when you get to the point to say, it's okay to say it's great to be here.
Right.
When you get to that point. And it's okay not to be ready yet. So just hit me for those listening, watching, whatever. It's okay where you're at. And but I said that, it just twinged me because I know how hard that is in the early stages, for some, in the early stages of grief. But anyways.
Right. Well, and I remember.
I dove right in. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. Like, I felt guilty the first time I laughed and had fun again after Ashlyn died. And so you make a very good point. We want to recognize that people are all across the spectrum, and wherever you're showing up today, you're in the right place.
Yeah, for sure. For months, we didn't listen to music, my wife and I. And
really?
Music's joyful.
Right.
And, that wasn't working. So anyways, all right, back to the introduction.
Okay. So how did you become interested in sports and recreation?
Yeah. So, some of it's natural, right? I think we're created to play and goof off and have downtime. But, early on, I was part of a mission team for several years in a group of churches. We get together. They weren't big enough to send out. Their youth groups weren't big enough to send out a mission, so they all would get together. Yeah. And in that is where I discovered sports ministry. I didn't know it at the time, but we would show up in a city, in a small town, pass out flyers on Sunday saying, hey, we're going to be at the park all week and playing games. Come show up. Kids would show up and we'd play games with them and share the gospel. I didn't even know I was doing ministry. I was first one when I was 15, and I did it all the way through college. But early on, I was just doing it because mission trips are cool. And then through that, God opened up some doors, opened up my eyes, and so forth. So, I'm a very, in my life, very purpose guy. Like, I don't like to do stuff just to do stuff usually. There's goofing off time. I like to sit on the beach and do nothing. That's for sure. But even that has a purpose. But chicken wings, I'm not sure if they have a purpose. But in general, and so, for me, sports and recreation and ministry combined because of the purpose. Recreation and leisure drops barriers. Whether social, economic, or even internal, emotional, and all that stuff. And so when I'm with 400 kids in the middle of a field playing games, there's kids there whose parents are getting divorced. There's kids there who boyfriend and girlfriend just broke up with them. There's kids there that are going through all kinds of stuff. There's kids there that aren't going through anything. They're just happy. But in that hour of recreation, all that goes away. And they laugh and they have fun. And it gives an opportunity for them to have a little bit of clarity. And at that point, God can speak to us a lot of times because those barriers are gone away. So anyways, that's where it all started, with sports ministry when I was a kid.
I love that. And I love that whole intersection of ministry and recreation, and how it gives us space and clarity and breaks down barriers. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So by processing grief in healthy ways, obviously we can learn to find joy again while still honoring and remembering our beloved. How do you see sports and recreation help with working through various aspects of grief?
Yeah. So we're created in a certain way. God created us, and we have checks and balances within our own body and who we are, our emotional side, our logical side, checks and balances. If you eat too much, the balance is going to sway one way, right? If you don't eat enough, it's going to sway another, and all those things. So recreation and leisure, I believe, hits all of those. I can remember early on, and I'm going to say a name. Am I allowed to say names here?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. I didn't get permission, but I know him. He'll be all right.
Okay. We'll tag him in it.
Yeah, tag him in it. And,
okay.
But early on, after my daughter passed away, and had a great group of people around us, and some things they took me that I didn't want to do. I can remember a bunch of guys taking me to a hunting expo. I don't hunt. I eat the food they hunt, but I'm not a hunter. But they did that to get me out of the house, to keep me moving, right? Well, Jim Sizemore, a good buddy of mine, a great guy. He would take me running, and we would run together beforehand. He was always better than me. I was I wasn't as good, but he would make sure we go running. He'd call me up, and we'd meet, either a run on the road, or I remember going up to Ashland once and running in a park and stuff like that. And I think his goal was really just to get me out, right? Don't let me wallow away in my sorrow in my house, but do something. But through that, you start to recognize some things. When you're exercising, walking, riding a bike, playing a game. That's not exercise, but that's leisure, right? Monopoly. Although I always lose to my son, but so it's really not that enjoyable. It's not leisure to me because he kills me. But in those things, it gives your mind a chance to break away from what it's focusing on, and the sensitivity to that, because in the early steps of grief, that's all that's there, and it shoves out everything else. And so depending on what you're doing, it gives that opportunity to give the brain a rest a little bit, I believe. I think physically, there's a lot going on during grief physically. You've seen people drop a lot of weight. They haven't necessarily changed their eating habits, but they drop weight. Sometimes they do change their eating habits, but your body, it needs to work through that. And by pushing your body, you're releasing chemicals. And I'm no scientist. This is Doug's whatever. So I don't know if you get comments on these things, but don't butcher me, because I'm not going to be a scientist. I'm just saying, when you exercise, chemicals are released and endorphins are released, and that helps what's going on with you internally. I think socially, recreation and leisure, we have a tendency to only see right here in grief, and that's because the storm clouds are so thick. It doesn't change the reality. When a storm comes over my house is not gone. But if you're 2 blocks away, you can't see it. Mm. And so when we're in life and we're in grief and the storm clouds come, we miss out on seeing the stuff that's there.
Right.
And whether it's friends, whether it's flowers, whether it's, family, all the 3 F's. That's a good sermon: friends, flowers, and family. And I think recreational leisure helps us get past those things. It goes back to that example of 400 kids in a field. All these barriers drop down. And for a moment now, early on, it's so hard to do that. It's so hard to smile. So it's not like, oh, I'll go do this and I'm great.
Right.
It's a process, right? It's step over step over step. And you just keep stepping. And it may not feel good, but you got to keep stepping. And then eventually, the road, the scenery changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you touched on several different aspects of grief. Sometimes people just think that grief is emotional. We don't realize there's the social impact, there's physical impact, like there's fatigue, the mental part, the brain fog in those early days. Like it's all consuming, really. And just to get out of bed some days is a success.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, and I see that that whole need for rest and letting your mind rest, and the role of recreation and sports in that. And you are, even though you're not a scientist, you are right on, because cortisol, the stress hormone, is released in our body during grief and any kind of stress. And so it messes with our sleep, it messes with our metabolism, and exercise can help settle that down. Yeah.
And I encourage anyone who's witnessing someone going through deep grief, right? Those folks are imperative. A lot of times they're afraid to do something, afraid to, what do I do? You just need to stop with that. I had some guy wash my car, right? I know who the guy was, but he washed my car. Well, what's that have to do with grief, right? But he wanted to do something. The message it sent to me was somebody loves me.
Right.
Right. Picked it up, cleaned it. It was a 1996 Crown Vic. Like, there was nothing cool about it. It didn't need washed. It was someone needed to put a Mary Kay sticker on it but he washed it. So where am I going with that? If you're a friend around someone, take the initiative to take them to a hunting show, or call them every day for several weeks, or do something. Because with grief early on, and if you're in it, there's a paralyzation.
Right.
It's so much work to get out of the house. It's tiresome. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Right.
You have to go to work.
Right.
You have to get the kids to school. You have, and so while that's really hard, you still got to do it. But if you're a friend, you need to be thinking about, what can I do? And I won't say don't take no for an answer, because I don't think that's fair either. But it's okay to be persistent, and to drag people out and go for a walk or lunch or whatever.
Well,
I was in agony doing stuff, hating. I didn't want to do it. It was tired, all that stuff. But because they asked, I went. I can remember that fully. And I know that helped my progress.
Right. Well, and I remember Diana reaching out to me after Ashlyn died. And she said, come go with me to the grief support group. And and it was helpful. And again, we didn't stay long term in that space, but it was an indication that she saw me and she cared about me, and she walked beside me in that. And then you guys took us, I don't know if you remember this, you guys took us to hear a speaker. Like, I had this insatiable desire to learn about heaven, and this guy coming to town and talking about it. And
I remember that.
Come on, let's go. We drove out to Beaver Dam, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Over the river and through the woods. But and those things stick with you, and they are meaningful touch points that really probably didn't cost you much investment at all. And y'all were just a little bit ahead of us in the journey. Yet you were already pouring into other people. Yeah.
We didn't think of it like that.
I
don't know what we thought about. I was like, I'm not sure we thought about we were actively pouring into people.
But you were.
But, it's kind of amazing, because, that's still a very dark time, because that was probably year 2 of our, I think, grief process on the road. Well, it was early.
It was 2006 when
so it was year 2.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Which was early.
And look at that. Y'all were already pouring into other people.
Who knew? Who
Say,
knew?
come on, we're not going down together. We're walking towards right.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I don't know if I've ever officially said thank you, but thank you to both.
Well, I don't know if we can take much credit for that. God does crazy things.
Right. And here we are almost 20 years later, right?
Yeah, that's what's amazing. That's what's amazing.
So, so what's been most helpful to you in your grief? You shared a little about people reaching out and like not letting you sit in the darkness, but inviting you, coming to get you. Is there something beyond that maybe that was been most helpful?
So early on, there's a couple things. I hope I can remember them. I hope I get through the first thing and remember the second. So we'll see.
Right. Okay.
Early on, I can still remember the first time I saw or understood, I should say it that way, that someone was down the grief road further than me and they were making it. And I ran a rec center that was volunteer based, and we had 90 some people working the desk and coming through. There was a couple there. They were, I believe, I've forgotten their names and it kills me. It'll come back to me, but they were my Tuesday 12 to 3, either 9 to 12 or 12 to 3. That's our shifts. Right. And so every week, and I didn't know them, hadn't known them long, hadn't been at the church long, whatever. And they were retired. And so they shared with me that they had a daughter many years ago that had passed away of cancer, I believe. And when she was 12, 13, and I remember at that moment thinking they made it. And really they were making it.
Right, sure.
20, 30 years later, but I mean, he still cried when he talked about his daughter. But that was the first thing. It helped me seeing there's people further down the road than me. And I also think that's helped shaped what I do today, because I want people to see that they're not alone on the road. You don't think about it until you're there.
Right.
You didn't make the choice, but you're on it. All those things. So that's one thing that helped me personally, was seeing that further down the road, they made it. Hey, they didn't get a divorce. Right. Their marriage didn't fall apart. They still cry about their daughter. All that stuff. So that was very good for me. The other one, and very interesting, I had someone say early on that my wife and I are going to grieve differently, and accept that 100%. And so that was a good revelation to me. So Diana loved going to grief support groups. Loved. Let's use that in quotation mark.
Sure.
But that was that camaraderie of people. Me, I wanted nothing to do with that. You got your thing, I got my thing. They can be separate, back then. And so I would say this: a counselor can be a vital tool. And I went to a counselor. I went to a guy. I actually knew him before. And I'll tell you why they're important. Not for everybody. I'm making a statement. If you don't go, you're a bad person, all that good stuff. I'm telling you why they're important. We are created with emotions, and that grief dives deep into. And we're also created with a sense of logic and common sense, and the ability to make deductions based on circumstances. And when grief happens, they're out of whack and the emotions get heavy. And that clouds your judgment. And what a counselor does is help you talk through to make sure they're back here. And early on, that reasoning gets you back for maybe a week. And then you're a hot mess again. Right? And so you go back weekly, right? But then as healing takes place over time, now I'm going once a month. Now I'm going once every 2 months, or whatever the cadence is. And I look back, and I would not have been, I probably would have been positive about counseling and before, that. I'm not sure I would have sought it out. Like, it was just, it's a good thing. Great. Go if you want to go. But going through it, it gave a way for me to tell a person what I was thinking and them to say, well, let's talk about how logical that is. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So those are two things I think that were imperative to me. I think the third thing is community that I had nothing to do with, meaning that just happened.
Oh.
Community just happened. The people around us decided to step in. They could step in or they could step away. And they stepped in. They could step in and feel awkward. They could step in and say the wrong thing. They could step in and whatever. And they chose to do that. And some people said the wrong thing. Some people probably did the wrong thing. And I'm sure it was awkward at times. And we're still okay. So but that's something that just happened to us, and thank goodness. I don't know how people truly that don't have any type of community go through something like this.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that too. That whole, it's okay to be awkward. Like, it's just as awkward for us as it is for them, and let's just all be awkward. It's okay. Like, we can still communicate love in that space.
Well, I think I took it as a responsibility to accept the awkward and to make people feel awkward to get over it. And like early on, I don't know if it worked or not. It was like my little thing, but if someone asked me how many children you have, that's a tough one when you lose a child.
Right.
What do you say? When do you say it? Well, for a lot of time, I'd be like, yeah, I got one in heaven and two here on earth. She beat us there. Well, you want to talk about an awkward moment for the person who asked me how many kids that was. But in my mind, I was saying it's okay to talk about your loved one in heaven.
Right.
And some people don't think they should ever talk about it. Well, no, I'm going to talk about it. And I don't care if it makes you awkward, but hopefully if you'd never thought of it like that, you'll change how you think about it, or maybe if I remember going to a new Sunday school class, at a new church I was at, and that question was asked, wife and I stand up, and that's what I say. I have 3 children, 1 in heaven who beat us there, and 2 here on earth. And my thought there was, that's going to be awkward for everybody but me, but maybe there's someone in this room that lost a child and needs to hear, wow, I can talk about my kid.
Right.
So it's just one of those awkward things. And so I don't do this much now. I kind of pick and choose. But for a while I was like on a campaign, and, but now it's kind of like, okay, when's the right spot? When do I feel that I need to, there's the right audience to hear, hey, it's okay to talk about your loved ones that aren't here anymore.
Right. So I wrestled, I guess we all wrestle with that. Who do you tell? When do you tell? Like, I don't necessarily want to get in the conversation with the cashier at Kroger about it. Right. And I worked with a grief counselor, and she said, you know what, you have permission to try both ways and see what feels right. Yeah. You don't have to feel guilty if you don't mention Ashlyn, or you don't have to feel responsible for the other person's feelings either if you do. And so I finally decided, okay, I'm going to try not to mention her when someone asks how many kids you have. And so my other 2 were with me at the time, and the cashier asked, how many kids do you have? And I said, well, I have 2. And they're like, Mom, you're forgetting about Ashlyn.
Oh, wow.
And so I still had to work some work to do. It's different because everybody in the family is grieving, and they all have their own grief and how they process it. And so. Well,
but how cool that your kids understood they had a sister.
Right.
Like, that's the way we do with our boys. They know they have an older sister.
Right.
My oldest here on earth is our middle child. And so, and they know, Kristen, that name Kristen is not a faux pas name in our household. It's a member of our family. And so, but you're right. I bet you just walked back to the car about to cry.
Right.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah.
But that's what, and there's a person who's big on research and grief, and she says grief is learning. And it really is. Like, each one of those encounters, I learned something. I learned that my kids have their own grief. I learned that it's okay for me to figure out what works for me. I don't have to carry other people's responses. Like there was so much learning that happened and you don't really realize it until you look back and reflect.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I think a couple minutes. The bad thing about 30 minutes is I always need 60. So
that's all right.
But I'll end here.
Okay.
And I think what I would want couples to know when they're in grief, whether you lost a child or whatever it is, just remember and be supportive of how the other person grieves.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is people are going to say stupid, awkward things. And when they do, understand that the heart behind it is what's there. And so don't focus on those words. What you do with the words is you pack them up, and at night you sit across from your spouse and you guys say, you won't believe what was said to me today. And you laugh about it because you know the heart behind it is what's happening. They're trying to say something, do something to love you. And so I would say that, and I say those two things because you don't want bitterness.
Right.
Right. And between a couple, if you don't recognize you grieve differently and you're going to do different things, and you start getting bitter. Well, why do you need that? Why do you need to go for a walk all the time? Why do you whatever? And that becomes bitter. Well, they need to because that's who they are. And that's how the guy created them. They need to work with it. That's why. But we forget those things because I don't do that. Why do you cry all the time? How come you don't cry all the time? Right? All those things. Right. So that's important. And just always remember, look past the words and the actions if they're awkward. And you know the person behind them and they love you. So don't take those things the wrong way. Just move on. And I can still remember the things, a lot of them. And some of them, if I would have wanted to, could have been very hurtful. But that's not what they were trying to do. Right. And so I never allowed it to get there. So,
well, I'm glad that now you help educate people on what, by doing things such as this and engaging in the grief community, it's another opportunity for people to know how to better relate.
Yeah. And I want to say this to the men.
Please.
It's okay to grieve. In fact, we need more men to openly grieve to let other men know it's okay. I mean, why can't we? Did we love that person any less? I don't think so. And so I think there's this thing that the men want to put it all on their back and carry the load, and I understand that. And I think there's a lot of truth in men wanting to do a lot of that and how we're built, but we can't pack it away and hide it because it will eat you from the inside. Right. So, anyways.
Well, yeah, grief's not a sign of weakness; it's a sign of love, right?
Right. Absolutely. Could you imagine having a life where you had no grief? I mean, truly. And that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but we're all going to experience it. People we love pass away. Right. Parents, cousins, uncles, aunts, children, Could you imagine if you didn't have any of that in your life?
We'd miss out on all the other things too.
Not that I ever want to experience grief or want anybody else to, right. But I mean, it's part of the process. I mean, it is. So, and I know this, my grief is here. My daughter's in heaven. My grief's here. It's not eternal.
Right.
So it doesn't mean it hurts less, but I know I can't wait for that day when to her it's going to be like that.
Right.
She's not missing me. She's like throwing pebbles of gold around.
Right. Skipping them in a stream, right?
Yeah. Jesus is like, will you put the pebbles down? Like they're for the road. And I'm going to show up and she's be like, hey, daddy, and so the pain's just that absence that's very temporary. And the older I get, it's getting closer and closer to that won't be the case.
Right.
So
thank you so much for being willing to share. It's beautiful. I love hearing your journey and your encouragement to others. And so I'm so grateful that you were here today. And we're so glad to have you as part of P23 Retreat.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. Well, thank you for allowing me to come on, and hopefully it doesn't crash the servers and
Right.
just, like we can't have him back again. He just, everything stopped working. And then, P23 is doing a good thing. I'm not going to join something, where I don't think that's true. I'm not looking for a blurb on LinkedIn to say I'm a board member on this, although I'll put it on there at some point,
right.
if I haven't already. But that's not why I do it. I think P23 Retreat is just phenomenal for the purpose of the grief journey, and especially couples, because some people just need to be told, given a map, right, and love through it, and that's really what we're doing. So I'm glad to be part of it.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a happy Easter. It's Good Friday today, so
absolutely.
Things to be celebrating. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Doug. Have a great one.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.